Federal employees who may have been working remotely since the COVID-19 pandemic are being ordered to return to the office. Elon Musk issued a warning earlier this week that those who fail to return in person will be placed on administrative leave. I want to bring in award-winning author Daniel Pink for more on this. He's the author of The Power of Regret, How Looking Backward Moves Us Forward. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us. Let's just talk about, look, I get that in the private sector that people are used to getting emails like this or directives like this from managers. Hey, tell me what you did last week. I want to be up to speed as to what you're doing and what you're working on. But not if it's not done properly. For example, if I had a leader, if I had a manager who had no idea, no understanding of what my job was to begin with and asked me to justify that job, that might create some anxiety in the workplace and even perhaps a power struggle between the people who actually run a department and, for example, the CEO of the company. Can you explain a little bit of that?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I can explain fully what's going on here, but you have a guy with no experience in the federal government parachuting in with a group of 21-year-olds trying to remake the entire thing. And so you have to ask whether the anxiety that it's causing is the point of the exercise. That these return to office mandates throughout both the private sector and the public sector are generally a pretty bad idea. We know that from a whole raft of research. Generally, where most workplaces are going right now, most effective workplaces are going right now, is some form of hybrid. And that should be also true for the federal workforce as well. And you know, remember, the federal workforce today is about the same size as it was 30 years ago. And the idea that the federal workforce is, I'm a Washingtonian, is full of people who are simply pushing papers is completely wrong. There are air traffic controllers who are federal employees, park rangers, people who are doctors in VA hospitals. And so, so what's happening right now should be alarming to all citizens.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, if you're a doctor in the Veterans Administration and you're working to better the lives of those who have sacrificed so much for our country, how do you justify it to a guy who runs a technology company? And so I wonder, now the return to work thing is interesting. Look, I'm somebody who likes coming into work. I feel that I do better in that situation. But as you point out, there are statistics and there's data that points out that companies who have employed this hybrid work model are actually doing better than they did before the pandemic and before these hybrid models were implemented. So I wonder if, as you say, it's an interesting thought, which is that perhaps the goal isn't necessarily that these members of Congress actually care about whether people are in the office or not. The goal is to just upset the balance of equilibrium that perhaps the opposition feels, or perhaps people who are opposed to what they're doing feel.
I think that's, I mean, again, far be it from me to get inside the head of Elon Musk and infer and all of his intentions, but I do think that that has to be part of it. What we know, Vlad, as exactly as you say, is that companies, organizations that have gone to hybrid work have generally been pretty satisfied with it. Now, there are some big banks and things that are issuing these return to work mandates. But what we know, we had a very important study came out in the journal Nature last year by Nick Bloom at Stanford, who's one of the premier researchers in this. What it showed is that when companies that have hybrid environments, not fully remote, but hybrid environments, there's no decline in productivity, there's no decline in satisfaction, but there is an important uptick in retention. And right now, if you undo some of this remote work, it operates essentially as a pay cut to workers. Remember, we've been doing this remote stuff for 5 years. All right, that's a very difficult egg to unscramble. And so if you're gonna undo remote work after 5 years, what it means is people are going to be paying more for gasoline. People are going to be paying more for dry cleaning to get someone else to walk their dogs. And so this is why you have, especially in the private sector, some resistance against this return to work mandate.
Fascinating. Daniel Pink, thanks so much for joining us, man. Come back anytime.
Pleasure. Thanks, Vlad.